This is a dramatized fictional story inspired by real agricultural byproduct and livestock feed distribution practices. No character or business in this story represents a real brewery or real farm. It is a hot afternoon in Mason Ridge, Tennessee. Outside temperature is near 95 degrees. Production batch B14 holds almost 8 short tons of wet material from a large brew day. It was split into 2 container loads. B14A holds about 4 short tons and is already on the road toward Ruth. B14B holds about 4 short tons and is scheduled to go to Clara. The sublot sheet shows 6 hours since loading began. But no one yet knows that part of the material had been waiting before that clock started. The truck assigned to B14B cannot leave the brewery because the hydraulic system failed after passing its morning check. Marcus stops the truck as soon as he notices the fault. Wesley calls and offers to take B14B at a low price. His farm is farther away. His intake volume has not been confirmed by Dr. Morgan. His receiving area is not prepared for this trip. He is not the receiver listed on the sublot record. Clara is the approved destination for this load. Jordan has 3 options: wait for repair and risk pushing the delivery closer to the limit, rent a backup vehicle for about $700, move B14B to compost before the receiving window narrows further. The brewery had produced 8 tons that morning. Half was already moving toward Ruth Coleman's farm. The other 4 tons were still sitting behind the brewery, and the truck assigned to move them was no longer safe to drive. Jordan had not yet lost the grain, but the cost of trying to save it had already become larger than the margin on 4 normal deliveries. 3 months earlier, Jordan Hayes had not even known what wet brewer's grain was. He was delivering supplies to Mason Ridge Brewing and saw warm material coming out of the production area. It was wet brewer's grain, the moist barley left after the brewery extracted what it needed for beer. It steamed, and it was heavy, and it was shoveled into a holding area. Naomi Brooks manages production. She says the brewery pays to have it moved, and she needs a stable line. Jordan works in his mother's small hauling business. He knows how to log weights and schedules and fuel. He does not drive heavy commercial trucks. He does not sign contracts. He does not give feeding advice. Jordan tells his mother the brewery will not charge for the material. Camille Hayes owns Hayes Rural Hauling. She signs contracts, she buys insurance, she checks legal obligations, she manages money and risk, she has the authority to stop the pilot. She asks a series of questions. Who signs for the load? Who decides which farm can receive it? What happens if a tub leaks? Who pays when a farm refuses delivery? Where does the material go when no approved receiver can take it? Jordan cannot answer. The grain may be free, Camille says. The mistake will still belong to us, she says. She only agrees to study a pilot. Jordan writes a flyer that says cheap local protein. Dr. Morgan crosses it out. She is a ruminant nutrition specialist. She works directly with each farm. She says nutrient content varies. She says the material has high moisture. She says every herd has a different ration. She says price per wet weight cannot be compared directly to dry feed. She says farms need sample analysis and appropriate inclusion rates. She says Jordan is not allowed to give nutrition recommendations. She changes the flyer to documented wet brewer's grains available for approved local delivery. Jordan's role narrows. He will haul byproduct with records. Dr. Morgan and the farm owner will decide if it fits the ration. Ruth Coleman owns a small dairy farm. She is the first trial customer. She remembers when small dairy farms drove to the brewery themselves. They had trucks and tubs that fit wet material. Distance was short. Brewery volume was smaller. When small dairies closed and the brewery expanded, that informal collection line disappeared. Jordan does not find a secret new use. He finds a lost connection that used to work for a different scale. The team sets a maximum receiving window for the summer pilot, 24 hours. It applies per container load. The clock starts when material assigned to that sublot first enters any designated staging or holding area, not only when the tub finishes filling. A load can be rejected before 24 hours if it shows unusual odor or an unusual hotspot, or signs of contamination or incomplete records, or a compromised tarp or tub, or unverifiable source or time. A load that passes 24 hours is also not accepted just because it still looks okay. 24 hours was their delivery window, Dr. Morgan says. It was never a promise that everything inside the clock was safe, she says. The goal is not to deliver before a number. The goal is to keep enough information so the receiver can say no. A trial container load arrives at Ruth on time. The material looks normal. The record only shows when discharge finished. It does not show when the first portion entered holding. Jordan says he remembers the truck leaving right after. Ruth puts the sheet down. I am not buying your memory, Ruth says. I am accepting the record, she says. The tub is diverted to Ray. Ray Collins owns a permitted compost facility. He accepts organic material that does not qualify for the feed route. He charges a fee. He has intake limits. He is not a free dump site. Jordan receives a compost invoice. He loses fuel and driver pay and receiving fee. He learns that speed cannot replace documentation. After that rejection, Naomi and Camille and Jordan design the batch and sublot system together. One production batch gets one main code, for example B14. Two sublots get two codes, B14A and B14B, two timesheets, two scale weights, two destinations, two receiving results. The brewery is responsible before handoff. Hayes is responsible after signing. The farm has the right to reject at receiving. Ray is the paid backup. Each link knows when responsibility starts and when it ends and which record must travel with the tub. Wesley Grant wants all 8 tons each production day. That would reduce trips. Dr. Morgan reviews his use history and finds it not stable enough for that volume. Jordan also finds the route to Wesley is farther, and the return is empty, and the receiving area is not sized for 2 tubs, and delivering too much could move a storage problem from brewery to farm. He limits Wesley to the evaluated amount. He does not take all production just to claim he has a buyer. Clara Benson is near the return route of Marcus. She joins after Dr. Morgan reviews her use plan and her receiving area is inspected, and the route is evaluated by Marcus and refusal conditions are signed, and a delivery point code is created. She receives a trial container load. The delivery arrives within window. It has complete records. It is inspected at receiving. It is recorded with no notable abnormalities. After that trip, Clara is added to the official schedule. After 4 weeks, the system shows evidence it works. Naomi records when holding starts. 2 tubs receive 2 sublot codes. Marcus checks weight. Marcus uses a vehicle and trailer with verified weight capacity. Each tub is weighed separately. No vehicle is overloaded. Tubs are checked for ability to hold wet material and leachate. A backup vehicle is pre-checked in a list of alternate carriers, and it is compatible with the tub type Hayes uses. Jordan does not drive. Jordan cross-checks departure time. Ruth signs receiving. Clara checks sublot. Ray receives 1 diverted tub. Dr. Morgan reviews sample analysis. Camille reconciles delivery fees with route costs. 7 production batches are handled. 13 container loads reach farms. 1 container load goes to compost. 2 farms continue receiving. Clara completes her trial. The model has worked before the truck breaks down. Camille opens the books one evening. She shows Jordan fuel and driver pay and tub rental and cleaning and insurance and analysis fee and empty return and compost invoices. She circles the long route to Wesley. She says a normal container delivery only leaves about $175 of contribution margin after direct fuel and driver and cleaning and route cost. That figure is not net profit of the business. She says backup vehicle in an emergency costs about $700. She says $700 equals contribution margin of about 4 normal container deliveries. She says the business is not comparing that cost to total revenue. She says 1 trip does not erase profit of the whole business, but it erases margin of several normal trips. Jordan changes minimum delivery quantity and route pairing and distance-based fees and return scheduling and a reserve for backup vehicle. He stops using revenue as profit. Hayes would collect, document, and deliver the byproduct. It would not dry it or pelletize it or reformulate it or sell it as a complete ration. Camille reviewed the applicable business and insurance and transportation and feed requirements before signing the pilot. Wet brewers' grains have high moisture, and shelf time depends strongly on temperature and handling and consumption capacity and conditions at each farm. The pilot was not designed for extended open pile storage in summer heat. In this summer pilot, every approved load needed a prepared destination and a short receiving window. The brewery produces almost 8 short tons on a large production day, that is about 16,000 pounds per day. It is near 7.3 metric tons. Each production batch is split into 2 tubs of about 4 short tons, about 8,000 pounds each. Total actual load includes tub weight and trailer and tarps and water and adhering material. A normal pickup cannot pull a 4-ton wet tub safely. Marcus uses a vehicle and trailer with verified weight capacity, and each tub is weighed separately, and no vehicle is overloaded. Tubs are checked for ability to hold wet material, and leachate and tarps cover fully. A backup vehicle is pre-checked in a list of alternate carriers, and it is compatible with the tub type Hayes uses. Jordan does not drive. Mason Ridge has hot and humid summers, and the pilot runs from early June through late August. Distance for delivery ranges from 15 to 50 kilometers, and that distance matters for time and fuel and for keeping the receiving window. Empty return trips cost money even when no material is carried. Hayes Rural Hauling is a small family business. Camille owns it, and she signs contracts and buys insurance and checks legal obligations. She checks business and insurance and transport and state rules related to feed byproducts and delivery records and container equipment and a plan for rejected loads. She does not claim that because they do not process, no other legal obligations remain. The 90-day pilot has a budget limit of $12,400. Camille advances $5,000. Jordan puts in $1,400 of savings. The brewery prepays $3,000. 2 farms put down a total of $1,500 in deposits. $1,500 comes as supply and container credit. Cost includes specialized tub rental and weight checks and tarps and leachate control and insurance and sample analysis and consulting and fuel and driver pay and cleaning and compost fees and a reserve for backup vehicle rental. The town has a permitted compost facility owned by Ray Collins. He receives container loads that do not qualify for feed route, and he charges a fee, and he has intake limits, and he is not a free dump site. There is no nearby drying facility for brewers' grains. The brewery has 2 large production days each week. Each large day creates on average about 8 short tons split into 2 4-ton tubs. Before the pilot, Hayes only hauled general farm supplies. Jordan knew how to log weights and schedules and fuel, but he had never managed a time-sensitive byproduct. He learns that wet brewers' grains have high moisture and shelf time depends strongly on temperature and handling and consumption capacity and conditions at each farm. He learns that the pilot was not designed for extended open pile storage in summer heat, and that every approved load needs a prepared destination and a short receiving window. Ruth tells Jordan that small dairies used to drive to the brewery themselves with their own tubs. They had trucks that fit wet material, and distance was short and brewery volume was smaller. When small dairies closed and brewery expanded, that informal line disappeared. Jordan does not invent a new use. He finds a lost route that used to work for a different scale, and he tries to rebuild it with records and approved receivers and a backup compost route. Wesley Grant owns a beef farm farther away, and he wants large volume, and he does not have a stable enough use history for 8 tons at once. He is not used as an emergency delivery point. Clara Benson owns a small beef farm near the return route of Marcus, and she is evaluated by Dr. Morgan before joining, and her receiving area is inspected, and her route is evaluated by Marcus, and refusal conditions are signed, and a delivery point code is created. Marcus Dale is the adult driver with appropriate license and experience, and he checks weight and load distribution. And he does all driving, and he does not let Jordan handle hydraulic system or a vehicle under load. The first trial load that Ruth rejects because start time is missing teaches Jordan that a record is more important than memory. He loses fuel and driver pay and compost fee, and he learns that speed cannot replace documentation. After 4 weeks, 7 production batches are handled, and 13 container loads reach farms, and 1 goes to compost, and 2 farms continue receiving. And Clara completes her trial, and the model has worked before the truck breaks down. Camille opens the books one evening and shows Jordan fuel and driver pay and tub rental and cleaning and insurance and analysis fee and empty return and compost invoices. She circles the long route to Wesley and says a normal container delivery only leaves about $175 of contribution margin after direct fuel and driver and cleaning and route cost. She says that figure is not net profit and that backup vehicle costs about $700 and that $700 equals contribution margin of about 4 normal deliveries. Jordan changes minimum delivery quantity and route pairing and distance-based fees and return scheduling and a reserve for backup vehicle, and he stops using revenue as profit. Naomi offers an extra production day in 3 weeks. Jordan wants to accept because it feels like growth. Camille asks where the 3rd tub is and whether a 4th farm has been evaluated and whether compost has confirmed extra capacity. No answer is certain. Jordan declines all batches outside the 2-day per week schedule. Total pilot schedule remains 26 production batches. The scale at the brewery is checked each morning. Marcus pulls the trailer onto the scale and writes the empty weight. Then the tub is filled and he writes the full weight. The difference is the material weight. He does this for B14A and for B14B separately. He checks that neither exceeds the approved limit for the vehicle and trailer. He checks that the load is balanced and that the tarp is secured and that leachate will not drip on the road. Jordan stands nearby and writes the numbers on the sublot sheet. He does not touch the hydraulic controls. Naomi watches from the brewery side and confirms the batch code and sublot code and start time. She confirms that the material has not been mixed with any other material and that no chemicals have been near the holding area. Her responsibility ends at handoff. Hayes' responsibility begins at signing. The receiving agreement at each farm is short and clear. It lists the approved material and the required records and the right to reject and the compost backup. It says the farm will inspect at arrival and will record time and condition. Ruth signs it without hesitation because she remembers the old direct pickup days when records were thin and arguments were common. She says she prefers a clear refusal right over a low price. Clara signs it after Dr. Morgan visits her farm and looks at her receiving area and her cattle and her storage. Dr. Morgan says no single inclusion rate fits every herd, and the farm must use its own ration plan. She says Jordan must not give feeding recommendations. Clara agrees, and she marks a concrete pad where the tub will be emptied, and she puts a hose nearby for cleaning. Wesley signs a limited version that allows only the evaluated amount. He wants more, but the agreement limits him. He says he understands, and he will call if his use history becomes more stable. Ray Collins' compost facility is a fenced area with a scale and a receiving log. He checks each incoming load for source and time and condition. He charges by weight and he has a daily limit. He is not a free dump and he tells Jordan that from the start. Jordan learns that compost fee is part of the cost of doing it right. He learns that a load diverted to compost is not a failure of honesty, but a protection of the feed route. The brewery pays about $900 for hauling and disposal for 1 large production batch using the old line before Hayes. In the pilot, Hayes offers a lower collection fee and a 2-day per week schedule and 2 separate tubs for each batch and sublot, records, and delivery to approved farms and a compost backup route. Farms pay a delivery fee based on distance and weight and time and number of stops. Hayes earns money from logistics service. It does not sell a story that Jordan buys material for nothing and resells it as complete feed. The pilot runs for 90 days, almost 13 weeks, with 26 production batches scheduled. The brewery suggests adding a 3rd production day in 3 weeks, but Hayes declines. Total schedule remains 26. 2 days do not create a large batch. 1 scheduled brew day is canceled for maintenance. Another produces too little material to qualify as a large pilot batch and stays with the brewery's existing route. So 24 production batches are actually created. Each averages about 8 short tons. Total is near 192 short tons, about 48 container loads. Back to B14B behind the brewery. Marcus confirms the truck cannot pull the tub safely. Waiting for repair could push the trip close to the limit. Wesley is still willing to take it, but he is not the approved delivery point. Jordan proposes renting a backup carrier that Camille pre-checked. Cost is about $700. That equals contribution margin of about 4 normal container deliveries. Camille approves. The backup vehicle has appropriate weight capacity and is compatible with the tub and has a qualified driver. It only replaces the vehicle. It does not change the receiving point. B14B still goes to Clara as scheduled. Jordan pays to protect the schedule, not to create a new customer mid-crisis. B14B arrives at Clara within the receiving window. When the tub is opened, Clara and the receiver notice a zone with higher heat than the rest, and odor at that zone different from the earlier trial sublot. There is no direct evidence of cause. Time on the sublot sheet has not exceeded 24 hours. Jordan could argue the truck arrived on time, and the brewery signed handoff, and most of the tub looks normal, and the family spent $700, and Clara needs material. Dr. Morgan says, the clock tells us how long it has been moving. It does not tell us what happened inside the load. The signs do not prove exactly what happened biologically, but they are enough to keep B14B off the feed route. Jordan does not separate the normal-looking portion to sell. B14B is moved whole to Ray. Jordan loses $700 for backup vehicle and compost fee and contribution margin and driver time and delivery revenue. This is the central ethical choice. Naomi does not just remember the process. The team checks production log, and when the first portion entered holding, and when tub A finished, and when tub B started, and when tub B finished, and camera time of discharge and staff notes, and data from B14A and B14B. Records show part of B14B had remained in a shared staging hopper before it was assigned to the container. The batch log recorded that earlier hold, but the sublot sheet began only when the material entered tub B. So the 6 hours on the sublot sheet did not include the earlier staging time. B14A and B14B did not share the same timeline. The team does not claim they proved the biological cause of odor or heat. Limited conclusion is recorded. The records revealed a timing gap large enough to explain why the second container required different treatment. Process is fixed. Record first and last times for every staging area. Link every intermediate hold to the final sublot record. Display total holding time on the sheet. Reduce internal window on hot days. Allow direct diversion to compost at the brewery when schedule no longer fits. Do not merge evaluation of 2 sublots just because they share one production batch. Every intermediate hold must remain linked to the final sublot record. In 26 scheduled production days, 2 days do not create a large batch. One scheduled brew day was canceled for maintenance. Another produced too little material to qualify as a large pilot batch and stayed with the brewery's existing route. 24 production batches are actually created. Almost 192 short tons are tracked. About 48 container loads are recorded. 41 container loads reach 3 farms. About 164 tons are delivered. 5 container loads go to compost. About 20 tons are diverted. 3 of those loads were diverted before delivery. 1 lost its scheduled receiver. 1 could no longer fit the approved route. 1 arrived at the brewery without enough time left inside the internal window. 2 loads were rejected at receiving. 1 was the early trial rejected by Ruth. 1 was B14B rejected by Clara. Together, 5 loads went to compost. 2 container loads belong to a batch rejected at source. About 8 tons are handled through the brewery's old route. 3 farms sign next schedule. Ruth. Wesley with limited volume. Clara. 1 other farm registers only as backup point. Brewery signs 6-month contract. Limit 2 production batches per week. No guarantee every batch will go to farms. Brewery keeps right to divert when records or schedule do not fit. 41 documented container loads reached 3 farms. 7 loads went somewhere else because the feed route was not the right destination. The pilot does not make Jordan rich. It shows that part of a disposal cost might support a limited delivery service if the business is willing to document every load and reject the wrong one. After the pilot, Camille recovers part of her advance. Jordan has not recovered all $1,400. Backup vehicle and compost fees sharply reduce results. Operation can cover most direct costs at limited scale. It has not proven ability to expand or long-term sustainability. A new production batch is split into 2 tubs. Naomi records B25A and B25B and start time and end time in 2 destinations. Marcus checks weight. Ruth confirms receiving area. Ray remains on backup list. Jordan did not beat the 24-hour clock by moving faster. He beat it by knowing when one load should stop moving toward an animal. The pilot file grows thicker each week. Each sheet holds a batch code and 2 sublot codes and times and weights and signatures. Jordan learns to read the file as a story of where responsibility moved.